Paladin vs. Rogue. For this video, I am going to start off by trying something different, and cover what a 1v1 Paladin vs. Rogue looks like at the highest level, before going into why it ends up being this way and not, say, some other way. The short answer to that being that Paladin vs. Rogue is one of those matchups where the Rogue needs the Paladin to make a mistake, and the tactics you are about to see being used are designed by rogues to give the Paladin as much opportunity as possible to make that mistake. So, to begin with, the rogue will open on you with a short stun of 4 seconds and a long stun of 6 seconds for a total of 10 seconds of incapacitation time. During this time, the rogue will be dumping as much of their energy into you as possible, and both players will be observing very closely exactly what percentage of the Paladin's life total the rogue can do in damage within the confines of a single opener. The reason for this being that if that number is 50% or more of the Paladin's hit points gone from a single opener, then the rogue doesn't even need the Paladin to make a mistake, as the mistake has already been made via the Paladin not having enough hit points and armor to even have a chance against a well-geared rogue. Luckily, this mistake is rarely made by most well-geared Paladins in full plate mail, as it is damn near impossible to not have enough hit points and armor for this matchup whilst wearing most full gear sets, and truly impossible if the Paladin is wearing a shield. So after the first opener, and assuming that the gearing hit point error hasn't been made, the rogue will blind you, reset, and go at it again. Now, so far all of this is fairly standard, but that is about to change, as less experienced rogues, upon failing to do enough damage to force you to bubble inside of 2 openers, on account of you still having enough hit points left and are about to pot heal rather than bubble, will go pop T or go for a second blind. The best of the best rogues, however, will instead opt to pop evasion, giving them roughly a 70% chance to dodge any melee attack, and attempt to go toe-to-toe with you in order to force out the bubble. Now, the reason for this is because the best Paladin players and the best rogue players both know that if bubble is traded for a single blind or a single Thistle Tea, then the rogue basically wins. However, if bubble is traded for 2 of these major cooldowns, then the Paladin wins. It is just one of those facts of classic World of Warcraft. And so the matchup between the best of rogues and the best of Paladins always comes down to this toe-to-toe confrontation with but a single major cooldown having been used by the rogue, and no major cooldowns having been used by the Paladin. So what to do from here as the Paladin? The answer to that is, if you do not have a shield equipped for whatever reason, get to one as quickly as possible. Pot and Ripperroot heal as needed, swap to a one-hander that has a heal proc, such as Skullforged Reaver or Edward the Odd. Go Concentration Aura and make it your business to try to flash heal yourself as much and as often as possible. Now, you can throw out your stun here if you like, which if it lands and the rogue does not living action potion it for whatever reason, the fight is effectively over with the rogue having lost. But experienced rogues will simply not have even started a fight with a well-geared Paladin if they were not willing to do this from the word go. So I always just assume that my first stun will always be potted. Side note, a rogue's PvP trinket does not cancel stun, and living action potions are not cheap. So it is actually far more the norm to see rogues not using living action potion, which just gives you a free heal from here and thus the automatic win. Regardless, this should be seen as a sign of a noob rogue. More common to see is free action potion being used, but that tends to play out poorly for the rogue if the Paladin notices the Blessing of Freedom animation at the rogue's feet and holds off on throwing the stun, as you are now only 30 seconds away from trinket stun into full heal against such a rogue, and ultimately the victory. So why Concentration Aura and why the attempts at healing, you might ask? The answer to that is that rogue kicks cost energy, 25 energy to be exact. So even if the rogue constantly kicks your heals, denying you the 700 hit point gain, the loss of 25 energy is worth about 400 hit points in gain for you. So in a roundabout way, the rogue can actually not stop you from healing if you're using this tactic. Things become even harder for the rogue when you factor in that every yellow attack the rogue makes has a chance to be blocked, consuming the energy but accomplishing nothing. Also, block, dodge, and parry are likely performing murder on the rogue's white DPS. Improved concentration aura has a 15% chance to straight up ignore the kick, wasting the rogue's energy and still getting off the heal. And while the odds might not seem good to get a Reaver or Edward the Odd proc against a 70% dodging target, you will be surprised what parry haste, wreck charges, and the ×2 proc rate from Seal of Righteousness can do for you. And naturally, if you are not a Reckoning Paladin, and thus the odds of actually getting a weapon proc are very low indeed, you likely have Repent or Holy Shock to play with, which makes this tactic for rogues to spend some of their time going toe-to-toe with you in order to force out a bubble damn near non-viable. My point is that if you play the odds with a shield and force the rogue to waste energy kicking you, you will watch the rogue's DPS seem to fall off a cliff, and you could swear that they were in fact trying to tickle you to death. Too many blocks, a single Holy Shock heal, a single weapon proc heal, a single missed or fizzled kick heal, a single successful heal of any kind, and the rogue's chances to win this fight become almost non-existent. Now ideally, you will have made it through this evasion fight phase having used only one of your 2 pot heals, because what is about to happen is the rogue is going to T or blind you again, and then you are going to have to bubble to full heal. Then, after another opener into blind, and then into the rogue's last opener, of which you will PvP trinket the last 6 seconds of the stun, you are going to be yet again low on hit points, and right back into evasion fight round 2, with the rogue racing against the clock before your second stun or blessing of protection become available. Now just to be clear, a pro rogue's opener upon a paladin in total is open, do damage, blind you, open again, do more damage, pop evasion and go 15 seconds toe-to-toe with you attempting to force out a bubble, T to force out the bubble when that fails, use preparation to reset their cooldowns, open again, blind, open for the final time, and then to finish it out with the second evasion toe-to-toe, round 2. Now I know that sounds like a lot to take in, but all you as the Paladin player really need to remember is how to fight during the toe-to-toe phases, and to never trade bubble for anything less than 2 of the rogue's major cooldowns, be that 2 blinds or 1 blind and Thistle T. Now with these tactics, if RNG fails you with no weapon procs, no blocks, no failed kicks, no critical pot heals, you as a Paladin, unless you are Deep Holy or Deep Retribution, are ultimately probably dead to a rogue using these tactics. However, in my experience, the odds of this happening are only about 12% of the time or less, and as such, this strategy has by far the highest win rate of any of the Paladin combat strategies when dealing with truly monstrous rogues. So now that we have covered what the matchup looks like when I am dueling a stab or a perplexity, let's examine why things are done this way by the best of the rogues, and not any other way. First off, opening with T. Now, if you see a rogue opening with Thistle T, the correct response is to Blessing of Protection yourself, maybe throw a stun, swap to a shield if you need to, and go for a heal. This will force the rogue to toss out a blind to stop the heal, and rather effectively waste most of their T if you are quick enough on the Blessing of Protection. Make sure that you are in fact quick enough. From here, you will be around about 50% life or less, with the rogue having 2 full energy bars behind a blind reset to kill you inside of a 50-second time window before you can bubble and end the fight. Now this on paper sounds bad, as rogues can do round about 40% of a paladin's total hit points and damage with a single energy bar, and about 1% of the paladin's life a second in damage from white attacks. However, you still have Trinket into Pot and Whipper Root heal for a 45% life heal. Furthermore, trinketing the 6-second stun from a rogue, then spinning to face and hit them, often ends up being a catastrophe for the rogue's DPS, as now suddenly block, dodge, and parry are in play, to say nothing of all the proc-based heals and the loss of energy needed for the kicks, as explained before. The point is, you will easily and all too often regularly survive long enough to make it to your second bubble and stun, if you deploy the standard toe-to-toe combat tricks as we mentioned before, if a rogue opens with Thistle Tea. Often you will see the best rogues try this on you once, just to see if you are shit enough to bubble against a single tea usage. And then when they see Blessing of Protection into correct toe-to-toe play come out of you instead, they will never try tea openers against you ever again. Now the only other openers that I have seen from rogues really worth noting are where they will open with blind into tea, to which you just bubble and full heal and dare the rogue to try to kill you with their 2 energy bars to your 145% life total, and understanding of how to go toe-to-toe. Pro tip: if it doesn't work when the Paladin has only 95% hit points, guess how well it works when the Paladin has 145% hit points? It doesn't. Or the incredibly annoying opener for combo points into Expose Armor, into the rogue sprinting away to drop combat, then coming back in on you before Exposed Armor is off cooldown. Now this one is arguably the most deadly opener by far, but it comes with a few drawbacks from the rogue's perspective. First, it gives the Paladin all the time in the world to prepare for a Paladin vs. Rogue fight. So double Freezing Brand, Stamina Gear Swap, Title Charm, Arena Grandmaster Trinket, Life-Giving Gem, or just popping Rocket Boots after the rogue drops combat and saying, "Oh, so you are going to run at plus 70% movement speed in that direction? Okay, well I am just going to run at plus 70% movement speed in the other direction until your sprint wears off. Then mount up and leave, or just waste Exposed Armor's time, whichever you ultimately feel like." In either case, the rogue's chances to win become even less than the pro-rogue strategy I just described. So this is ultimately why you don't see these strategies being employed by the best of rogues. Now the last thing to talk about is how to actually kill a rogue, because so far none of the tactics that I have given you will actually kill a rogue unless the rogue is stupid or mad enough to stick around a bit too long for a second stun burst combo. However, I will warn you that if your burst combo fails to either kill the rogue or to do enough crippling damage to them to the point where they cannot muster enough hit points to execute the toe-to-toe strategy of the fight, then I cannot save you. You are going to die, especially as a Reckoning Paladin that does not have Repent or Holy Shock to fall back upon. Furthermore, most of these burst kill tactics that I am about to describe only work on 80% of the rogue player base, as if the rogue pots your stun, you will likely need to abandon your burst tactics for a shield and pray to the RNG gods for some good procs. Now all is not lost, but ultimately it is very much a 50-50 fight from here on out if your burst actually fails. Okay, so, when I picture the default gear set for the 4 Paladin specs, I picture the gear set here for the reasons explained in my Paladin vs. Hunter video. However, for burst paladins, I picture them having Death Ray instead of Gnomish Net, and a big-ass 3.8 weapon speed two-hander of various kinds, and maybe the extra 0.5 second stun duration necklace from ZG. Now the reason why Death Ray is so sexy for bursting is because it does not interrupt weapon swing durations nor reset them. As such, you can swing to hit your target, then activate Death Ray while spamming your attack, and when Death Ray does go off after 4 seconds of charging, down comes the 3.8 speed weapon swing with it. Thus, in theory, even with Death Ray being used, you lose almost no white DPS on your target. Furthermore, the 4-second charge time ends up lining up extremely well with the 6-second stun duration, and super well with the 6.5 second stun duration from Hero's Brand. Now you might not think that it does, but typically when a Paladin is looking to burst on a target, they will be looking to take the time to physically get behind their opponent, which I do believe starts after you break the 180-degree rearward arc. Now the reason for this, just in case you don't know, is that when you are physically behind your opponent, it pushes off block, dodge, and parry from the table, meaning that when you get behind your opponent to actually throw in your auto attacks, you get a massive DPS increase, especially for Reckoning. So taking the time to walk past this point and then swing into your target into a Death Ray is almost always the way to go if you can manage it. Thus, if you are going to burst on a rogue, the thing to do is to wait for the rogue to apply their 6-second stun upon you, then to trinket their stun while spamming your own stun. After successfully stunning the rogue, then try to break the 180-degree arc to get behind the rogue, put a melee swing into them, and then instantly go for your Death Ray. While Death Ray is charging, make sure to spam your melee attack with your mouse button, and be ready for some Judgment into Sapper Charge macro attack action with your keyboard once Death Ray completes. Now, if you are Deep Holy or Deep Ret, this burst combo will vary slightly for you, but it is ultimately not rocket science, so I will leave it up to you to figure out how best to burst on your target with whatever you have available. Now for some advice and recap in the Rogue vs Paladin matchup. Deciding whether or not you are going to burst on a rogue needs to be decided quickly, and typically within the first opener and no later than the second opener. As such, the best time to pull the trigger on burst is if you suspect the rogue to either be a noob or to be grossly undergeared. Thus, it is usually best to not burst right away, but to wait a fair bit of time when you are getting jumped on by a rogue, to give them the time and the space to prove to you that they either suck or are a force to be reckoned with. To illustrate this, I will show you what typically goes through my mind and where my focus is at when I am getting jumped on by a rogue with burst gear. The first thing I look for is to take note of what my HP total is and to start paying attention to how much damage the rogue is actually doing to me in the opener, or how well geared they are. On top of this, I pay close attention to their energy bar, and in a mocking way tend to mutter to myself to T or not to T, that is the question, as I watch to see if this rogue is going to T on the opener or not, which typically happens about 2 seconds into their 6-second stun if it is going to happen at all. Now, if they do T on the opener or are showing me relatively low DPS output, I will instantly pull the trigger on any burst options that I have, usually with Trinket Stun, and if that fails, I will go for a shield and play defensively as soon as I am able to. If the damage of the rogue is good, and I see no T being used on the opener, I will consider this rogue suspect, and contemplate while wandering around in my 10-second blind, whether or not I need to abandon my burst for a shield if I am using a two-hander or not. Usually this will depend on just how hard the rogue has been hitting me for so far, keeping in mind the 50% life rule. If I decide that I in fact do need a shield swap, then the play will be to trinket the 6-second stun on the second opener, swinging into the rogue's face and swapping to a shield as quickly as possible, while chugging a pot or whipper route, but never both. From here, things are usually fairly standard, as if you are dealing with a good rogue on the second opener, you will be entering the toe-to-toe phase, only ever so slightly the worse for wear. By far the best advice I can give in the Rogue vs Paladin matchup is to always assume that female rogues are PvP monsters and do not play offensively against them at all if you can avoid it. Other than that, other advice includes what if the rogue jumps you when you are out farming and low life? Well, the answer to that is to use your PvP trinket when you can, and even bubble sometimes to aggro a mob as soon as it is safe to do so, as rogues tend to have issues blinding you when there is a bear tickling your butt, and the matchup for them goes to shit. For this reason, rogues will always wait for you to finish killing your mobs before opening up on you out in the open world. So if you fear there might be a rogue around, just make sure to keep your life total high before finishing off the last mob if you can help it, and you should be fine. In any event, if you follow this advice versus rogues, you should have about a 95% win rate against most rogues, and an 88% win rate versus the best of the best rogues. Anyways, this has been Paladin 215, hoping for you all the best of luck in all of your PvP matchups.